The world has changed. Our country has changed. And unfortunately, an episode like today's episode has become a necessary part of being a traveler. So today we're going to talk about safety on the road. And again, I know it's probably not that fun of an episode to talk about. Certainly it isn't. But it is important, and I think it's incredibly necessary this day and age. Like I said, the world has changed. Our country certainly has changed. And unfortunately, as a traveler, you can have a target on your back, whether it's the money you're making or the fact that you might be on the road by yourself. We're going to talk about it today on this episode of Travel Evolved. This is Travel Evolved. I'm Mark Holloway. Welcome to the episode today, ladies and gentlemen. I am talking to you from the road. I've got kind of a makeshift portable studio. I've been doing this for the next, number of weeks, possibly the next 3 months or so, that we'll be doing our episodes from the road. I'm actually out on the West Coast. So again, today I got a little bit of grief from my social media director. She's like, it's maybe too early to do an episode about safety. We don't want to lose your audience. I'm like, my audience knows me. And this is where I kind of put my foot down a little bit and said, yeah, I understand this episode isn't very sexy. This episode doesn't have a lot of fun. I'm not going to get really elevated. It might a little bit, but we're not going to be talking about numbers. We're not necessarily talking about things that are fun to talk about, like I said. But I did think this was important. It's an important one for me. Things have changed in my life. Obviously, I've got kids that are growing up, and unfortunately, like I said in the intro a little while ago, the world has changed a lot, and unfortunately I think our country has changed a lot. There's a lot of things maybe either I'm more aware of by having kids that are older now, that I'm so protective of my kids. One of them is out here going to school. One's about to potentially next year. I'm not sure where he's going to go, but things have changed for me. I've always been worried about travelers. I've always talked to travelers and said things that maybe not everyone's willing to say or talk about. But this is one of those episodes that I feel was really important to get out. I wanted to get it out early so we can cover it, be done. And those of you that are following me, those of you that may have been following me down the road, that maybe this is one of the first episodes you're listening to, all of this would maybe come into play. And again, with Travel Evolved, I'm trying to take your game to a little bit higher level. And this is unfortunately one of those things that I think is important. Like I said, I want to get this out early so that I feel good, that I know that if you've listened to this series or you're listening to this series or watching us on YouTube, that at least I feel like you've had an opportunity to start thinking about some of the things that maybe you haven't thought about. And that's just one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode. Renee wanted to do it early. So it's become necessary. And let's just be honest. And again, I don't know. This is just me being totally blunt. I don't know if things have gotten worse. I've just become a little bit more aware of our world right now. Our world seems to be scary. I mean, all these people being abducted. I've been watching things. I don't know if it's because social media is more prevalent. I don't know what the reason is, but I've just seen a lot of things live. I've actually looked and watched videos of mostly women, unfortunately, being attempted or potentially even being taken away. And not to be, again, dark or whatever, but when you get taken away from some of these folks, you don't come back. And it has nothing to do with oftentimes your age, it has nothing to do with even your sex, the way you look, you name it. Everybody in this country can potentially be a target. And unfortunately, you men and women out there, if people get to know you a little bit, they find out that maybe you're making a lot of money. Maybe you've got, again, things we're going to talk about in this episode, but you just have to be aware of some things. So it is, like I say, it's not a fun thing to talk about. And a lot of people aren't going to mention this to you, but I know a lot of you, and a lot of you I've gotten to know very, very well over the last few years. Many have admitted to me that you guys travel completely alone, that you oftentimes are, maybe not making the best decisions. Sometimes you want to get to the assignment, you're driving late at night. And again, these are things that, if nothing else, this episode, it just should bring some things to your front and center. You get one chance to make a mistake, unfortunately, and that mistake can cost you dearly, and cost you plenty. So let's just jump in. Let's talk about it. And unfortunately, like I say, this has become a necessary episode. Like I said, maybe I'm naive, and maybe this has always been the way that our country has been, but it sure does seem to me lately like, I didn't realize how many abductions there were in our country until, maybe a half a dozen years ago. And that could be complete, me being naive, or maybe it's gotten worse. I really don't know. And unfortunately, you can't really see statistics on this stuff. It isn't, for whatever reason, our country, it's not openly talked about. But you go back to people being attacked or worse. This has always been the case in our country. And like I said, if you're not constantly thinking about it, and I know most of you do, but if you're not thinking about it every second that you are not at your facility, potentially not, in your Airbnb or your apartment where you're safe potentially, I want to change that. I want to change that mindset because, like I said, I care about all of you. I know many of you. And sometimes when we talk on the phone, I do get worried. And I've said to both, you guys know, those of you that have talked to me, I've said, wait, you're traveling by yourself. And I have these discussions above and beyond what we're talking about because it is something I think about. Like I said, maybe it's because I now have a daughter who's at the age where I worry about her. It's the one thing that keeps me up at night. I can't be there making sure she's making good decisions all the time. And she is. The girls at her age have really gotten smart about the way that they live, their lifestyles, the safety they have, where they are making sure they're not as vulnerable as they maybe would have beforehand. So again, this whole episode is not simply going to be about that, but it is something where I felt, I hope you guys understand, I felt this was something we should talk about. It's one of those things in industry that nobody talks about except for maybe you guys do together, but certainly not someone who's the CEO of a company doesn't sit there and openly talk about how scary it could be on the road and on your own. So that's why we're gonna jump into it. Let's just start off with the journey to the assignment. We do have episodes coming up about how fun that can be and how wonderful that can be, and really trying to take great advantage of being on the road and enjoying getting there. But today, let's just talk about the safety aspect of it. First and foremost, I want to talk about your car. If you are just traveling, starting off traveling, or thinking about traveling, please make sure that your vehicle is reliable. You really shouldn't be doing this career if you've got a significantly older car, and you're just not able to. It's not reliable, and you're worried about breaking down. It just makes no sense. That is one of the things that I would urge anybody, that if you're going to travel, you need to make sure that you either can afford or go out and get yourself a new vehicle that has a lot less likely chance of giving you some trouble and putting you in a position that you might be on your own and stranded somewhere. I don't care if it's the middle of the day or anywhere. It's really important. If you've been traveling, I hope that you've been putting some money aside. Make sure that the car you're driving, the vehicle that you have, is in good shape. We just went and checked, and my wife's car, we actually rotate summer and winter tires. It's got those, fat kind of summery tires that don't last very long, and it's something that you're going high speed, and some of those real high performance type tires, those things blow out real quickly. Certainly, if you're traveling somewhere and you're going to be going somewhere where there is bad and icy and potentially snow conditions, make sure your car is equipped with the right tire. You do not want to be in a situation where you don't have traction, where you're slipping. Forget about the personal safety. I'm just talking about getting in car accidents. Make sure your car has been updated. You've gotten maintenance checks. I don't care if it's right down to windshield wiper fluid. You guys ever been in that situation where you're in a bad snowstorm or really heavy weather, or just behind somebody who's throwing back some really mucky stuff and you literally can't see? Pull over, get off the road, stop at the next gas station, and get yourself some good windshield wiper fluid so you can see and you're safe. Make sure that you do a maintenance check. I would urge you. We're going to do a whole episode, but I don't think we do it for quite a while. Maybe even months and months down the road. We're actually going to do one on car care, and for those of you that aren't big car people, some things you may want to make sure you consider. So I don't want to redo that episode here today. but make sure that you're at least taking your car in before you go to an assignment and before you come home from one. Check to make sure that I don't care if it's your belts are worn, just get an overall tune-up. Make sure your oil is changed. They will look at your air filter, they'll look at your belts, they'll look at everything to make sure that at least is going to minimize the chance that you may have a breakdown. And again, if that mechanic or wherever you're taking it says, you may want to do this, you can certainly get a second opinion. We obviously have talked repeatedly about making sure that you're keeping your expenses low, but this is not an area to cut expenses down on. Your car is your livelihood to getting to an assignment. It's your livelihood while you're on an assignment typically, but certainly the safety of that car and your safety, making sure that car is up to snuff and is going to get you there safely, going to perform perfectly for you while you're on the assignment and get you home. It's incredibly, incredibly important. And tires and any just normal things are a big, big, big part of that. Okay. Again, I don't want to repeat that episode. I don't want to preview that episode too much. We're going to be talking a whole episode at length about it. I'm actually going to get an expert in here, do a split screen. We'll do a more of an interview of somebody that really understands some things to look for, somebody who's much more knowledgeable about the safety of a vehicle. But I just want you to be aware. Again, what you carry in your vehicle for safety, that is a completely personal decision. I'm not going to talk about weapons on this episode, conceal and that kind of stuff. That's a personal decision. You guys can make that decision on your own. But obviously make sure that your vehicle is safe. I hate to say it. Let's talk a little bit about housing. I think housing is one of those areas where I do think this really does lend itself to a little bit more of a conversation for us. We do talk repeatedly on this series and on Travel Evolved about saving money, putting money in your pocket. I believe in all that. You guys know me well enough by now to know that I'm a big, big proponent, big, big believer in making sure you're not just wasting and throwing dollars away. However, it cannot be, in my opinion, at the cost of your safety. You guys know if you're a tough part of town, or it is in an area that doesn't have good security, good lighting. Most of you, or a lot of you, are working and coming to and coming back to a facility, and from the facility, I should say, at dark. Whether it's you're working your days or nights, typically the time of year, those two times when you're coming or going, 7P or 7A, typically is dark for most of the year in a lot of parts of the country. So be aware of what you're looking at. Check to see if you can see safety issues. This is one of the reasons why I'm a big fan, and I do like this, and I'm going to put my fingers in the air, the extended stay type brand. I love the fact that you've got typically those places, as I've mentioned before, are usually not built in rough parts of town. They're not built where there is oftentimes a concern for safety. They're attracting business travelers, or they want to attract a wide wealth of people. So normally, they're going to be built and are going to exist in places that are decent parts of town. So there's a good sense of security, knowing that you're probably going to be staying in a place that is, in a relatively good area of town. Usually the parking lots are very lit up. Oftentimes they're close to major roads, so it's not out off the beaten path, so to speak. And you're also coming and going into an internal entrance into your apartment or your hotel room for that length of assignment, which includes obviously the social aspect, which I love that part of it, but also the safety and security aspect of it. You've got someone typically there at the front desk. If something weird is going on, or someone's following you, or you have any kind of concern about your safety, there's someone there to talk to. When you are renting your own Airbnb, you don't really know. Oftentimes there's not anybody to talk to, especially when you guys, like I say, come and go. So for that aspect, I'm a big fan of having an extended stay or a corporate type, housing that is at a hotel or someplace where you've got your own kitchenette in there, because it, to me, makes a lot of sense. Really be careful when you guys are looking at and choosing your housing. People are going to take pictures and put pictures and post pictures, whether it's an Airbnb type place, when it's the middle of the day. They want you to be able to see it. It's going to look nice. Do some asking around. Ask the owner. Tell them, I travel alone. I'm concerned about my safety. Is this place lit up? Is it in a residential area? Is it in a commercial or industrial area? These are things that you oftentimes can't tell from an Airbnb. Look at the reviews and look at those very, very heavily, because sometimes you'll never know. Someone might say something or talk about those in that. But consider that. Obviously, if you are traveling by yourself, and again, this episode, I don't care if you're a man or woman, young or old, It all applies to everybody. Nobody, unfortunately, in our world, and this sounds so negative, I'm already hearing myself as I'm talking in this episode, but no one is really safe. No one is really, off limits, as they say. People are weird. People, it's not always about, again, how small or how big you are, your age, your sex, you name it. People could find something that is interesting about you that will attract them to you or make you a target to them, I guess is a better way of putting it. So what I'm getting at is just be aware. And obviously, I'm going to talk about this repeatedly during this episode, I really want you guys to think heavily about your routine. For those that know me or anything I've done when it comes to health and eating and physical fitness, I'm very regimented with my lifestyle. However, when it comes to coming and going from work, in a town you don't know, with people in a place that you have never lived in before, I want you guys to really, really think heavily about your routine. If you're working every, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you're coming home and leaving your place at the exact same time, or roughly a 10-15 minute window, that's not a good idea. If you can, maybe go early, maybe have your breakfast or your dinner, at the facility, or mix it up a little bit. And that applies to everything that we're going to talk about here today. Having a routine is bad. And I talk to my daughter about this all the time. Never have a routine that you do repeatedly. I understand you've got classes and things you have to go to and do certain things, but even with that, try to keep yourself a little bit less routine. And you guys definitely have a routine that you want to be aware of. So getting back to housing is just one of those things that you just need to kind of really consider. When you are looking at housing, I'm just telling you, be aware that it's not always about money. It's not always about finding a place that's cheap, because oftentimes with that cost or lack of cost, oftentimes the lack of security or safety can oftentimes elevate as well. So just, again, be aware of it. So anyway, kind of moving along and keeping going. Again, this is not going to be a very lengthy episode. I just want to get this stuff out there so I can, again, maybe this is more for me. I'll feel good knowing that I said my piece. I did what I could to help people be a little smarter, a little safer while you guys are on the road, and then we can move on to some of the other fun stuff and things that are going to help you guys make some money. But I don't care if you're a 6'4" guy. It is. Everybody needs to be aware of what's going on. There is no rhyme or reason to crime typically, and so you guys got to be aware of it. Everybody does. So one of the things I like about traveling with a pet, especially if your pet is a little intimidating. I mean, if you're traveling with a cat or a little tiny foo-foo type dog, maybe not so much, but dogs make noise. People don't like dogs. People are not going to be as open to approaching you or coming into your apartment, or if you're walking a dog on the street. Statistics will tell you that people that have dogs or animals like that are typically way, way less targeted for that sort of thing. That's why we're talking about a big pity for my daughter. California allows them. I love them. She does too. So I'm going to find her the biggest dog I possibly can, and he's going to be a good boy to her. I mean, it's real, guys. I have, as you guys all have well documented, I have 3 boxers. And I live in a house that literally 2 o'clock in the morning, one of mine will hear something and all 3 are up. And sometimes it's irritating, but there's a noise that doesn't happen in my house without one of those dogs being aware of it. And it's pretty interesting how well they can hear when you can't. So there's a really good safety feature with traveling with a pet. It's one of the biggest advantages, I think, in having one. Not only do you have the companionship, but you've got a safety potentially there too. So for those of you who are thinking about leaving your dog predominantly at home, maybe think about taking him or her with you. There's a lot of good benefits to it, and a lot of good reasons why you want to go in that route. Okay, the big one, the one I really want to talk about, and I'm going to spend some time on this. I know I'm talking quick. I'm a little out of my element. This is a new place. I've never recorded out here before. Been coming here many years, and so anyway, I knew I needed to do this stuff, so I'm actually sending this footage back to Colorado for them to play around with it, so hopefully that it's well, and it does well. I'm doing the best I can on a pinch, but this is going to be a quick episode, but I just want to get it out there like I said. The big thing I want to talk about today really comes down to common sense with social media. Again, I know sometimes I repeat myself, but this is one of those, you got to be really smart, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Social media is one of those areas that having rituals, having routines is really bad. And some of us, people are really guilty sometimes of sharing way too much. You don't need to share every restaurant you go to. You don't need to share, photos of, the guy or the gal you're seeing or dating, your husband and wife, your family, your kids, certainly. This is where you have to have a little bit of scrutiny and say, you know what, I am on the road right now. It's one thing maybe when you're at home, but when you're by yourself and you're in a vulnerable situation, you got to be really, really, really smart. Again, with routine, if you guys go to a certain place, I don't care if you're a guy and you're going to watch the game every week at a certain place or every night. If you're a gal and you guys are going out and having drinks or going to have dinner, you just don't need to tell everybody and anybody where you're going and what you're doing. You guys have people in the hospital. I know many of you have talked to me about this. You'll get there. Let's say you're maybe you don't even have to be single. I've had stories where people have told me that an employee of the hospital, maybe another person that works there in your department, has gotten you feeling a little bit uneasy. And so those are the kind of people you have to be aware of. If someone's making you uncomfortable, don't be sitting there telling everybody where you're going and what you're doing, where you're living, what apartment complex or what place that your Airbnb is, or what exactly the extended stay is that you're living at. These are really, really simplistic things that I know you guys know this, but sometimes you just don't think about it. And again, you never know when someone all of a sudden is going to, I guess, target you or put a finger in you saying, hey, I want to find out more about that individual. You got to be careful. I'm careful. I don't ever tell anybody where I'm at, where I live, where I'm staying. I don't, that's the kind of thing you just got to slow down and go, wait a minute. And this is, again, I'm in an industry where it's kind of my job right now to get this stuff out there as much as possible. But you'll notice there's no landmarks. I don't sit there and put, pictures of a hotel where I'm staying out there. Every once in a while I'll tag myself in at a restaurant, but it's not routine and it's very atypical. And again, most people that I work with out here, I'm not typically, personal friends with. So it's a little bit different. But if I was traveling on my own, I would be incredibly, incredibly secretive about what I'm doing and where I'm going. Social media is an area that any law enforcement officer will tell you it is one of the biggest places nowadays that people are finding other people of interest through and on. So guys, you might have a family of a patient. You just don't know. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to make you think. You guys already know this stuff. Most of you do. But if you haven't, or if you're a new traveler, maybe you just haven't thought about, boy, I really need to change my social media habits and not be quite so willing to talk about what I'm doing, who I'm doing it with, where I'm going, the time of day I'm doing it, that sort of thing. And that applies to everything, like even a gym. My daughter and I started working out here. She wanted to go to the gym, which, thankfully she wants to go with her dad so I can teach her a few things, which I thought was really cool, that she's going to go with her old man here and I'm going to teach her some things. But I said to her the first thing, I said, when I'm not here with you, do not come to the gym by yourself at the same time, 5 days a week, 3 days a week, you name it, mix it up. And I asked her, please don't ever go there, at night. Don't go there first thing in the morning, early to get a workout in before class. And please don't go after it gets dark. I just one of my rules with her. And she respects that and she understands. And I explained to her why. I said, I don't want you going into the gym every Wednesday at 8 o'clock in the morning. It makes no sense. So mix it up. And mix it up because it's good for your body to work out different times of day anyway. So we had a lot of conversations about that. And we talk a lot about going out with her friends. She never goes any place by herself, ever. I know it sounds weird and crazy, but that's just part of our rules for being and going to school away from home, is that you've got to be mature enough to have the level of smarts about you that you're constantly thinking about the what ifs. And I want travelers to feel that same way. So she doesn't ever post on social media any kind of routine or anything that she's doing. She really doesn't. She's learned to be more of a viewer of social media and less of an active participant in here's what I'm doing and throwing my life out there for everybody on the planet to see what they're doing. And trust me, you guys probably know me well. My wife and I check that all the time. It's incredibly, incredibly important. She obviously has things, and I would recommend any traveler, I don't care, again, male, female, young, old, you name it, have some kind of an alarm, mace, you name it, that you carry with you all the time. like I've said repeatedly already today, you guys are oftentimes entering and leaving your facility in the dark. Who knows what that means? Every campus looks different. So you may have a long walk. You may not have a lighted walk. Noise makes people that could be some bad folks out there very uncomfortable, very nervous. That's why they don't go after people that have dogs. Have something that makes a lot of ridiculously loud noise. They will run away. One of the coolest things I saw, I guess if you could say it was cool, but I was watching, I want to say it was TikTok. I always use that as an example because it seems like I'm doing that more and more. A young lady was somewhere, a security camera. She was at a gas station actually filling up gas, and a van came flying up. I think at least 3 men jumped out and were going to grab her. Smart thing, she grabbed the gas nozzle, pulled it right out, and started spraying them with gasoline, which you'd think, well, it's just wetness, right? But it worked. Those guys are all like, oh my gosh, I'm covered in gasoline. Didn't like it much. They got back in the van. They drove away. She probably saved her life at that point by doing something that smart. She had her wits about her. They came up so quickly that obviously, if she wasn't paying attention, I mean, these are the kind of things that keep me up at night when I see that sort of thing. I don't know where it was, but these men were going to do some damage, do some bad things potentially to this young lady, and she had the smarts and the guts to do whatever it took to defend herself to make sure that she wasn't going to be getting in that van. That's for sure. So I've seen a lot of other things where people just scream, kick. My wife has said, boy, you know what, anybody, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I'm not, going anywhere. And she's really aware of where she goes, that there are, she doesn't go place by herself. She's always got her keys in her hand, ready for an attack kind of situation that she can defend herself. Again, guys, I know this is a weird episode because it is unfortunate that we're even having this conversation with. I feel like I have to, but I really feel like I do. And again, maybe it's the dad in me now, and I'm old enough to be most of your dads anyway, as we've well documented on Travel Evolved, many, many, many of you, that it is time someone started talking about this sort of thing. I don't see a lot of this out there on social media. I see a lot of things about, again, like I talk about money, assignments, you name it, but I haven't seen a whole bunch of anybody talking about personal safety on the road, being smart on social media, being smart with your routines, having things that will help you defend yourself or at least draw a huge amount of attention to you if need be while you're on the road. And that's why I felt this was a good at least to have a quick conversation about. I don't know if I'm doing this episode justice. Like I say, this is a new environment for me. I'm not quite in my element here. I'll get better on these ones, but this one I said, you know what, I'm just going to knock one out real quick to see if I can do a quick episode here, see how loud it's going to be, and if I can give an episode that's going to at least have some information. I felt this would be a good one to kind of start this out with. I think we'll probably go into some detail down the road, but not for a while. I just wanted you guys to be aware that safety on the road is a really, really important aspect. Again, I don't care. Like I said before, there's no one set of people that have to be really aware over the other. It's everybody. And unfortunately, I love our country. Those of you that know me know that I'm a big patriot. I think we live in the most amazing country in the world. I really, really mean that. I do, however, see things differently as I've gotten older. And I do see, I don't know if it's a sign of the times or just my wisdom, but there are some really, really bad people that live on this planet, and certainly the ones that live here in this country as well. And there are some people that don't have great mental health, and that could be part of it too. There's a lot of drugs that are happening in our country and always have been. So you just have to be aware of everybody. You can't be. I remember when I was in college, I broke down going from Bradenton, Florida up to Tallahassee, and middle of the day. And I broke down on I-75. I'm thinking Colorado. So I-75. Slammed the hood of my car down. I got maybe 20 yards, and an older couple came and grabbed me and picked me up and took me to the next exit. Wasn't probably smart for them. May not have been smart for me. They must have trusted me. Who knows what? But I don't know if you do that this day and age. I know I have. Relatively recently, I've helped out. My wife and I helped out a young man in the middle of nowhere. I want to say it was in Utah, middle of nowhere in Utah. He was at a gas station, needed to ride back to his car. I don't know if I'd do that again. That was maybe 15 years ago. Same situation. I kind of put myself back in myself being in college, and that's exactly what it was. His car broke down. He got it to a gas station. He was heading back the other way, and we got him to his car. But nowadays, you can't be that good of a Samaritan. And there's a wonderful thing that we all have now called cell phones. So you don't always have to stop for somebody. They can do it. God, this sounds like I'm just being whatever. I want you guys to understand I'm protective of you because, again, you guys are by yourself oftentimes. You're making a ton of money. You have nice things. You have a nice car. And that is, obviously in our day and age, that is something that people are looking for. And that may make you a victim as well. So use your head. Please, please, please use your head out there. Know that I care about each and every one of you. And again, I'm sorry for this episode being a little bit dark. I knew it would be. There's really no way to talk about this and have a good light conversation. It's dark, heady stuff. So know I care about you. Know there's a bunch of other people out there that do. Use your friends. Get some good advice from them and be really smart and pay attention to the safety on the road. Guys, I appreciate it as always. Fast and Furious today. Next week, a little bit more in depth. We got a good one coming up. Thanks for subscribing to our podcast. Thanks for subscribing to our YouTube channel. Those are going through the roof, and I can't thank you guys enough for being a part of Travel Evolved. I will catch you next time.